starting out with Mustafa Azizi. He's the CEO and co-founder of ZUUM, obviously a transportation solutions company that's driving the digital transformation and global supply chain and logistics. He oversees operations and product development. Prior to launching ZUUM, he spent over 12 years in the logistics industry as a transportation manager and chief operating officer, where he identified an urgent need for more efficiency in the $800 billion trucking industry. Azizi is redefining the rules of competition by advocating for inventive partnerships and leading defragmentation of the logistics industry. Let's continue on to Kurt. He's the member of the executive leadership team for Google Android for Cars initiative, working with global manufacturers and product teams to create seamless and sustainable customer-focused solutions that augmented the Android automotive program. Prior to Google, Kurt was the global head of innovation, smart mobility, and connected car for General Motors, where he worked with corporate and business unit leaders to found a new connected car incubator that created new businesses in the autonomous, connected, electric, and shared vehicle spaces. Next, we have John Fitzgerald, Vice President of Business Development with Project 44, the leader in advanced visibility solutions and API solutions for the supply chain. John consults with shippers and 3PLs to assist them in digitizing supply chain visibility, drive cost savings and productivity improvements to truly transform their global supply chain. John has over 40 years of experience in supply chain execution. And last but not least, we have Bobby Harris. He's the founder and CEO of BlueGrace Logistics, a third-party logistics firm headquartered in Tampa, Florida. BlueGrace is known for a focus on high-performance shipping technology and innovative culture, and having hyper-growth since its inception in 2009. And now I'll hand it off to Eric to lead this panel. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Matt. Wow, really fantastic panel. So let's just dive in. Let me first kind of roll the ball out by asking everyone to maybe jump in on what they see as kind of the biggest challenge in the world of logistics these days. And maybe, you know, we're all sort of in this headspace of COVID, but maybe can we think a little bit about kind of what you guys see as the major challenge in a post-COVID normal, whatever normal world means going forward? Because we obviously been thinking a lot about what it means in the short term, but maybe kind of longer term impacts, right? Maybe Bobby, do you want to kick us off?
Yeah, I think if I had to say that the biggest challenge ahead for us, you know, as an industry is, you know, these are unprecedented times, obviously, and many of us play an economist as far as our most critical role for. It's been harder to predict that than ever. It's there's not a lot of history in the last 20 years that you can call upon that have seen these types of markets that rise and fall so fast. So as post-COVID goes, you know, there's a lot of conjecture on where does it go, but you have a lot of very intelligent, bright people that come up with very disparate views right now. So I think it's kind of figuring out where it's going. That would be my number one challenge, is just trying to get a good pulse on that.
Yeah, great point. Kurt?
Yeah, thanks, Eric. And thanks, Mustafa and Matt, for having me. So logistics is not my industry, but of course I'm a user of logistics, and I am transitioning from Google's Android for Cars initiative right now. So I'll have an update on that soon. But I'd say one of the biggest challenges I see is fragmentation. You know, whether it's because of a surge and kind of a crossing the chasm event that was accelerated with Corona, you know, and everything that's being shipped, and everyone that's needed to join in and help. It seems I have some really good friends that work at a famous EV company that Elon Musk is the CEO of. And I see them and their logistics team on the phones all day, every day, just trying to scramble and get Tesla Model 3s delivered all over the country. And it's just so fragmented there. It's like human powered to try to get it done. So I think that's one of the biggest challenges, just the fragmentation and trying to get someone that wants to ship goods to the end customer.
Yeah, it's a great point. John, you have a little bit of experience in the industry. I know you just started out, but maybe what do you see as kind of a big challenge right now?
Yeah, first of all, thank Mustafa and Matt and the ZUUM team for having me join this. And I know I'm the oldest one here. I'm certainly not the smartest, but I've seen a few things. I think I have a Tesla, a Model 3. They did a good job getting that to me, Kurt. But I think going forward, some of the challenges we had before are just going to be accelerated going forward. We've already heard that from some of the other speakers, how different digital initiatives moved forward because they had to, because of the pandemic. That's going to continue. There was a study by McKinsey that 85% of the companies struggled in responding to the pandemic because of the lack of digital technology. Talent is still going to be huge, all the way from drivers to data scientists. It's not going to change. And then some of the other speakers also talked about change management and adoption of technology. And I think we'll be talking a little bit more about that. But Michael from Gorilla Glue talked about tying strategy into the value, into adoption, and getting that buy-in. We're going to have to be a lot better at it as individual companies and as an industry.
Yep. There was a conversation at your event a couple of days ago about that very topic, right? So yeah. Really interesting stuff. Mustafa, what do you see as kind of the big challenge? You're always so optimistic about everything. Tell us the one thing that's most optimistic about.
So for me, the challenge is surrounded around the notion of mindset and seeing that really our biggest problem is that we're so successful as a nation and we're growing so fast, and that creates chaos and defragmentation, and then we're scrambling to find solutions. So I think the real challenge in that is finding a balance between growth, sustainment, and innovation at the same time, and using collaboration as the oil to make it happen. And ultimately, as an organization, just seeing this from the inside for the last 5 years, growing a startup, solving an industry, people, we need more talent. We need more drivers. We need more collaborators. We need more people with the right mindset.
Cool. Well, one thing as an aside, one thing I feel has undoubtedly happened is all of that VC money that we've talked about, and just equity as a whole, it's brought a lot of talent to the industry over the past 10 years that would probably have gone to another industry in normal circumstances. So maybe that will start to resolve itself over the next few years. John, let me bring you back in. How can you kind of describe how the conversation with your customers has changed over the past year? Obviously, COVID kind of uncovered people's, where they were a little vulnerable, where they were lacking maybe capability they thought they had. Well, how have you seen those conversations change?
Well, biggest change, and was talked about by Pat Martin and others, is the gone from the face-to-face meetings to Zoom, which has put challenges on communication and collaboration, as all the speakers have talked about. But I'd say the conversations have changed with customers because of the pandemic, as more of a focus on responding to disruption, moving from cost to service. Many of our chief supply chain officers now are measured on consumer experience, customer experience, net promoter score. But as the other speaker said, you got to balance. There's got to be an ROI at the end of the day. A lot of discussion on resilience. Are we really building? We don't have all the answers. We can't forecast the future, but our systems and our processes, are they able to address disruption? How are we going to respond to be more resilient in the future? And then the other thing that's been talked about quite a bit is this has accelerated the need to move forward in visibility and other technology solutions that maybe were on the back burner and were exposed because of the pandemic, because people really weren't able to respond and didn't have visibility to where the inventory in transit was in a transportation environment. Those are some of the conversations I've seen.
Yeah, sustainability is in there too, right? That's a
absolutely
huge buzzword right now. Bobby, same question for you. How is the tenor of the conversations with customers?
I think the interesting thing for us with the customer conversations are you're having conversations with different people. It's the buyer and the people making the decisions now is moving a little bit more upstream, sometimes even into the C-suite. More and more, you're finding that they've always found their supply chains are very critical, but never more so than in the last year. So it's drawing the attention of even some very large companies will include their board on those discussions. It's not about how much does it cost to get this done. It's how much does it cost if we don't get it done right? And what are we losing out on that we could be gaining? So there's a lot more sophisticated conversations, a lot more data being involved in these conversations, and certainly a different audience that I've noticed in the last year.
Yeah, when stuff starts to move from the Journal of Commerce to the New York Times and Financial Times, then you know things are coming to a head a little bit, right? So let's shift gears a little bit. The last panel talked a bit about this, but I think it's probably, this is probably the panel to really address the issue of adoption, right? This is a problem. Like, a procurement team can go out and buy the most amazing software, the most amazing tech, but if the users don't actually use it in the way it's supposed to be used, or they figure out hacks around it because they like the way they were doing it before, that creates a problem. So, Mustafa, how do you sort of get around or break through any skepticism that when it comes both on the procurement side, but also on the sort of behavioral user side?
Yeah, so in the last 5 years, as we've been presenting our solution to prospective buyers, what's changed a little bit on that is that they're getting a lot more smarter because a lot of different tech solutions are coming to them. So they're, as Bobby said, they're moving to higher C-suite decisions. For us, to this day, some of the most challenge is not getting the buy-in of the initial person that you're proposing the solution. It's that you spend 10, 15 calls just trying to win champions within that organization over the next 40 weeks. So for me, it's not even the tech sells itself at this point, and we have 8 Fortune 100s to show those success stories. It's the time spent with just getting through the bureaucratic, mindset changes, basically.
Yeah. John, I heard you chuckling. I assume you encounter some of the same stuff.
Yeah, well, I was with GT Nexus 7.5 years before Project 44, 3.5 years. So I've been in this SaaS environment. Back in the, 10 years ago, you spent a lot of time explaining what cloud was. I think most people now know what cloud is and software as a service, and certainly APIs. An API open platform is where the industry's going. But I think Michael Ahmed from Gorilla Glue really hit it. It's what problem are you trying to solve, and how does it tie into the strategic initiatives of the company, and how do you make visibility real from a tangible standpoint? How is it going to save in labor at the DC and at a store, other operational efficiencies? How's it going to reduce costs, detention, demurrage, vendor chargebacks? How's it going to improve the customer experience on time and full? Again, back to a net promoter score. So it's really taking the visibility and working with the customer to quantify what is the business case and the ROI, and getting more of the people involved. Unfortunately, a lot of those meetings that Mustafa said are actually necessary to get that cross-functional buy-in. How is customer service going to use this, the inventory planner, not just the transportation department? So it's part of an education process, and the more people that understand it, and then when you quantify it, we see the adoption go up tremendously.
Great stuff. Kurt, so the next question I have is actually one that I think about a lot, because it's good to step back, from the industry that we are in, and look at other examples of what has gone on and how this industry can draw from inspiration from those. So what industries, in your experience, do you think the logistics industry can kind of draw that inspiration in terms of developing solutions that are actually meaningful?
I see a lot of industries can benefit by looking at the telecommunications industry. So a lot of the service-centric mindset and connecting things together, whether that's called handsets or set-top boxes or whatever it is in the telecom world. And the idea, we talked about kind of churn, and we talked about maybe average revenue per user. So we can look at other industries where there's different levels of service You start with connectivity or access. You can layer on broadband. You want silver, gold, or platinum? Do you do pay TV? What is your package? What is your streaming? And we've seen safety and security can be monetized. We've seen some other services that can be monetized. But I think looking at that industry in terms of a long-term customer relationship, who's got the billing relationship, how you can bundle services together and package them and price them, and I think a lot of the whole SaaS, whatever the industry is, we can take a look back at telecom, and I think that would be give us some clues.
That's a really interesting actually model, and I'd add one more onto that could serve from the telecom industry is standardization, right? Like yes. we used to have to get a different chip. What's the little thing I'm spacing on this
SIM card?
SIM card. You used to get a different SIM card anytime you went to a different country. That all went away. There's a lot of standardization that has benefited the consumer, and then it benefits the ability of the application providers to be more pervasive, right? So yeah, really interesting. Yeah, great thought to kind of build a model around what the logistics industry could be. Mustafa, any thoughts on that as well? What industries have you kind of taken like inspiration from outside of this one?
Yeah, so we had a Jeffersonian dinner that Kurt was part of, and the one thing that always stuck with me was like look at other industries. I mean, the rideshare industry, because we're a digital freight broker and we're also a technology SaaS provider as well. That was a really good insight. I got a lot of inspiration from things that are happening right now, like with Instacart. The answers are kind of like all around us, and these ebbs and flows of different industries and disruptions and solutions are almost like economic or real estate cycles. They're repetitive. So for me, it's just like I can look at any industry and get insight from it. Maybe I shouldn't go into that answer.
Well, no, it's interesting because that you bring up like things like rideshare and Instacart, because some of those have been things that have been very easy to apply to this industry. Like, oh, there's very much like for like things we can take from it. I was a caveman when DoorDash went public because I said, I don't see the big play here. And then some people gently nudged me and said, no, there's huge logistics plays down the road when you build the network of final mile, right? They just don't always have to be delivering food, right? So you're right. It's sort of like you open your eyes and you look around and there is inspiration to be drawn from out. So maybe we can wrap up. You've talked a lot, Mustafa, about collaboration, but let me maybe first turn to Bobby and say what's sort of your outlook in terms of using common platforms, collaborating with companies that might, from the outside looking in, seem to be competitors that you might be fighting tooth and nail with? Where can you collaborate and compete?
I think our industry's kind of dictated that over the last decade even. It's been kind of surprising early on. You'd see it's a very incestuous space, for lack of better words. It's people are always just looking to get the best result. And how do you do that? It's you fight this in every organization where you have this pride of authorship. And that becomes a big part of, that's some of the headwinds that you face. And then on the other side is the outside world looking at what do you have and what do you do that's proprietary. But there's I don't think it's binary. I think it depends on what you're talking about. Certainly technology is different than, assisting with capacity and how much, security is there in between trade secrets. But, BlueGrace has been, we've always said, how do we serve our customer best? It's kind of been our approach. And we partner with dozens and dozens of other 3PLs that utilize our LTL platform. So it's not something we're foreign to. It's, and I think it will evolve, but I think people are going to be shocked seeing the next iteration going forward. If you look at just even like the vaccine right now coming out, you see so much collaboration between all the competitors, and they're not worried about who gets credit for it. It's just been a real lesson on how proper collaboration works.
I've seen this, to go back to the sustainability thing too. I've heard more chatter around companies that, whether on the shipper space or the service provider space, talk about, okay, we need to sort of put down our weapons for a second and work together to be better, jointly more efficient in the way that we do things, and then we can compete once we're on the store shelf. The kind of classic cliche.
Yeah.
Mustafa, I'll give you maybe final word on this, since you should just change your last name to Collaboration at this point. So
can you retap that question, please?
I was going to make a quick comment while you did
oh
that.
sure, yeah, John, go ahead. Yeah, it was sort of how do you work in an environment, a collaborative environment, where you're also competing?
I think I was going to say, I think this, as Bobby said, this whole ecosystem, we have to work together. We're partnering with other people. BlueGrace is one of our clients. We partner with Tive on sensors and other technology companies. The Pat Martin on Estes, who was on before. There's a digital LTL council where you're bringing together all the competitors, carriers and shippers to talk about how do we achieve touchless shipping with a electronic bill of lading. These are things we have to work on together. It's going to be constantly changing as we go forward.
Yeah, just to kind of piggyback on that. Well, I've always believed that the meaning of life is to give. Sometimes when we go to other tech partners that could be considered our competitors, and we have a platform that's revolutionary and we think has a huge value behind it compared to what's out there, got to give it to them for free just so they can enjoy it and embrace it, or buy their product when you're the startup, and they should be buying your product as a big brother. And I think if we do more acts of humility like that, ultimately a momentum is going to form, and it's just going to be blindingly evident.
Interesting. It's interesting to marry all those perspectives with Kurt's thoughts on how fragmented the industry is, because I don't think the fragmentation is necessarily going to go away, but is there a way to keep the fragmentation and increase the collaboration? So maybe that's a good thought to leave on. Matt, I'll pass it back to you, but thank you to Bobby, John, Kurt, and Mustafa for some great perspective.
Great work on this panel. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, Eric.
Thanks, Eric.
Thanks, Eric. What a great panel, great discussion. Just to kind of add some detail to that, I think the topic for today that we went over, our title was Paper to Platform. And the way you're going to get paper to platform is basically getting an end-to-end solution through partnerships, to bring together the conglomerate of companies that may look like they may be competitors, but have more in common than otherwise. And by bringing the people together and putting together an easy to implement solution for our customers, at the end of the day, it's going to bring ROI. Here at ZUUM, I mean, we spent years incubating a lot of that internally and really driving that ROI, and not going the way of like just automating everything or trying to solve the problem in a vacuum. We spend a lot of time with shippers, brokers, carriers. You guys see a lot of the partnerships we already formed. There's a lot that's coming down the pike. So we're really excited about this whole concept of paper to platform and partnership, and really bringing that end-to-end solution for the industry. So with that said, that concludes the solutions panel.